Okay, so let's start with a thought experiment. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're walking down a really busy city street.
Right.
Could be New York, could be London, Tokyo, wherever.
Yeah.
And, you're just going about your day. Maybe you're grabbing a coffee, heading to a meeting.
Just a normal day.
A completely normal day. But there's one very strange detail about your outfit today. You're wearing a backpack.
Okay.
But it's not just any backpack. This one is completely, totally transparent, like clear plastic.
Ah, okay. So everything inside is on display for the whole world to see.
Everything. And because you're, running errands, your wallet is in there. And, of course, the wallet is transparent, too. So everyone walking behind you, that guy on his phone, the woman at the bus stop, they can see exactly how much cash you're carrying.
Which is already deeply uncomfortable. I mean, nobody wants that.
Uncomfortable is putting it mildly. But let's push this nightmare scenario a little bit further. Imagine that every time you stop to buy that coffee, the barista doesn't just see the $5 you hand them.
Oh, no. Where is this going?
By simply taking your money,
Yeah.
they instantly get access to your entire bank account history.
Wow. Okay, so that's a whole other level. That's not just uncomfortable, that's catastrophic.
Right. They see what you bought yesterday. They see your salary deposit from last Friday. They see that embarrassing medical purchase you made 3 years ago. They can see your donations to a political party they might absolutely hate.
It sounds like the premise for a dystopian novel. I mean, it sounds like a society where the very concept of a private life has just been abolished by law.
It really does. And if I told you that this exact financial system was being built right now, today, you'd probably say, no thanks, I'll stick with cash.
Of course. Who would sign up for that?
But here's the hook for today's deep dive, and it's a sharp one. This whole scenario I just described. That transparent backpack,
Yeah.
that is exactly how Bitcoin and the vast majority of cryptocurrencies function today.
And that is the truly great irony of the entire crypto space. It was an industry founded by cypherpunks who were obsessed with privacy.
Absolutely obsessed.
Yet they kind of inadvertently built what is arguably the most effective and permanent surveillance machine in human history.
We are going to unpack that paradox today. This is our deep dive into privacy and crypto. We are going to completely shatter the myth that Bitcoin is anonymous. Spoiler alert. It's really, really not.
Not even close.
We're going to look at the industrial scale spy network that has sprung up specifically to track it. We're going to break down the tools people use to try and reclaim that privacy. We'll get into the heavy math behind Monero, Zcash, and mixers.
And then we have to wade into the ethical swamp. Is financial privacy just a tool for criminals, for cartels, or is it a fundamental human right?
Exactly. This is one of those topics that seems super technical on the surface, but it's really about power.
Yeah.
It's about who gets to watch whom.
And honestly, that transparent backpack analogy is the only way to start this conversation, because the gap between what people think crypto is and what it actually is just massive.
So let's start right there with that gap, because I think if you ask the average person on the street, if they know anything at all about Bitcoin, they'll say something like, oh, that's that untraceable internet money for hackers and spies.
Yep. That's the pop culture reputation it's had for a decade.
And it is pretty much the exact opposite of the truth.
It is. And that whole misconception comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of two very specific words, anonymous and pseudonymous.
Okay, so let's distinguish those. Because in normal conversation, they sound almost interchangeable. But in cryptography, they are worlds apart.
Completely different universes. So let's look at physical cash first. A $20 bill that is truly anonymous.
How so?
Well, if I meet you in a park and I hand you that $20 bill, that transaction is strictly between us. It's peer-to-peer. There is no central server recording it.
Right.
There's no memory chip in the bill that says, this was previously owned by Bob, and before that, Alice. The moment it leaves my hand, the link to me is severed.
It just evaporates. There's no paper trail unless we, decide to write a receipt or something.
Exactly. Now, compare that to Bitcoin. Bitcoin was first marketed as digital cash. A much better description would have been public digital ledger.
A public ledger.
Because Bitcoin is pseudonymous. It's like a writer using a pen name. In the Bitcoin network, your name is your wallet address, that long string of letters and numbers.
The one that usually starts with a 1 or a 3 or a BC1.
That's the one. So when you make a transaction, the public ledger doesn't say John Smith sent 1 Bitcoin. It says address A sent 1 Bitcoin to address B.
Okay, so initially there's no real name attached. It's just a code. And that's why people think it's private. Address A doesn't look like my name?
Initially, yes. But here's the trap. While your name isn't there, The record of the transaction is. And not only is it there, it is on a permanent, immutable public ledger that anyone in the world can download and look at.
It's like having your entire bank statement posted on a giant billboard in Times Square, but your name is just, like, scribbled out and replaced with a random number.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. And that's the key.
But if it's just a random number, why does it matter? I mean, if nobody knows that number belongs to me, I'm safe, right?
That is the gamble you are taking. But data doesn't exist in a vacuum. The moment that random number, your wallet address, gets linked, even once, to your real-world identity, the game is over.
What do you mean the game is over?
That single link becomes a retroactive Rosetta Stone for your entire financial history on that address.
Okay, so how does that link even happen? I mean, I assume most people aren't, like, walking around wearing T-shirts with their Bitcoin address printed on them.
It's incredibly easy, and usually you do it yourself, voluntarily. The most common way is through something called KYC, Know Your Customer Laws.
Right, the stuff you have to do to sign up for an exchange.
Exactly. You go to a centralized exchange like Coinbase or Binance. To trade, you have to upload your passport, your driver's license, your utility bill, you take a selfie. Now that exchange has a database that says, in no uncertain terms, address A equals John Smith.
And even if Coinbase doesn't publish that list, which they wouldn't, data leaks happen all the time. Or subpoenas happen.
All the time. The government just asks for the data and gets it. Or maybe you do it yourself by accident. You post your address on Twitter to ask for donations for a charity you support.
Oh.
Or you buy a T-shirt from an online store. They need your shipping address. You send them Bitcoin from your wallet. Now that merchant has a record that connects your crypto address to your home address.
And once that single link is made, even just one,
the transparent backpack is unzipped. If I know that address A is you, I can use a block explorer, which is basically just a search engine for the blockchain, and I can see every single transaction you have ever made with that address. Ever.
So I can see who you paid, when you paid them, how much you paid them.
I can see your current balance down to the last Satoshi. Your entire financial life connected to that address is effectively, permanently doxed.
And unlike a bank statement, you can't shred it. You can't burn it. It's on the blockchain.
It's carved in digital stone. A government or a corporation 10 years from now could find that old link and audit your entire life from today backwards. It is permanent history.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second because I can hear some of our listeners thinking, okay, that sounds a little creepy, but I'm just buying coffee and paying my bills. I'm not buying illegal stuff on the Silk Road. I have nothing to hide.
The nothing to hide argument. It is the most common refrain, and it is arguably the most dangerous one.
Why dangerous?
Because it frames privacy as a concession to criminals. It creates this false equivalence where privacy equals secrecy, and secrecy must equal guilt.
So how do you reframe that for people? Because it's a very deep-seated reflex. Only bad guys need to hide things.
I usually ask a very simple, non-financial question. Do you close the door when you use the bathroom?
Yes, I certainly do. Every single time.
Okay. Are you doing anything illegal in there? Are you, manufacturing meth in the bathtub?
I sincerely hope not.
You close the door because it's a private act. You close the curtains in your house at night. Not because you're building a bomb, but because you don't want the whole world staring at you while you watch TV. Privacy is about dignity.
It's about personal space.
It's about agency. It's about having the power to choose what you reveal to the world and what you keep for yourself. But beyond the philosophical, there are very real, very practical dangers to this nothing to hide mindset when it comes to your finances.
Okay, let's get into those dangers. Because the source material for this deep dive breaks it down into what it calls the 4 pillars of why privacy matters. And these aren't abstract concepts.
Yeah.
These are real-world risks.
Yeah, very real.
The first one is just basic physical safety.
Right. Let's go back to our transparent backpack for a second. Nobody in their right mind would screenshot their bank account balance and tweet it out to the world.
Of course not.
You'd be painting a giant flashing target on your back for every scammer, thief, and, potentially violent criminal within 100 miles.
Yet people, very wealthy people, hold millions of dollars in crypto in public addresses that are sometimes linked to their names.
And this leads to what the security community brutally calls the $5 wrench attack.
The $5 wrench attack. That sounds ominous.
It is. It's a brutal reality. You can have the most sophisticated, military-grade encryption on your laptop. But none of that matters if someone breaks into your house and threatens you or your family with a $5 wrench until you give them the password.
Because the crypto is just a password away.
Exactly. If criminals can look at the blockchain and see that John Smith, who lives at 123 Maple Street, holds 50 Bitcoin, well, John Smith is now in mortal danger. Financial privacy is physical security. Full stop.
That makes perfect sense. If nobody knows you have it, nobody can come to take it from you.
Plain and simple.
Okay, pillar number 2, competitive disadvantage. This one seems huge, especially for businesses trying to adopt crypto.
Oh, it's a deal breaker for many. Imagine you run a business, a manufacturing company. You decide to be modern, and you're going to pay your suppliers in, say, Ethereum because it's fast and international.
Sounds reasonable.
Well, because the ledger is public, your competitors can now just watch your company's wallet. They can see exactly how much you're paying for your raw materials. They can see when you pay your employees, and they can probably figure out how much you pay your top engineers.
They could basically reverse engineer your entire profit and loss statement.
Your entire business model. Your suppliers, your margins, your payroll. In traditional finance, that information is a trade secret. Companies spend millions on lawyers to keep that data quiet.
Right.
In a transparent blockchain world, it's just public intelligence, free for the taking. You lose all your negotiating leverage. If a competitor sees your balance is low this month, they can start a price war to try and drive you out of business.
It's a total non-starter for any serious enterprise adoption.
Yeah.
No company wants to play poker with all their cards face up on the table. So what's the third pillar? Discrimination.
This is where money gets political. And, we've seen this happen again and again. Donating to certain causes, even perfectly legal ones, can get you deplatformed or debanked.
You're talking about things like the Canadian trucker protests a few years back, or maybe pro-democracy movements in Hong Kong or Belarus.
Exactly. Those are perfect examples. If you donate to one of those causes using a transparent crypto like Bitcoin, you aren't just giving money, you are permanently signing a public registry.
A registry that says, I supported this.
A permanent one. An authoritarian government can just scrape the blockchain, identify all the donors, and then freeze their assets, get them fired from their jobs, or, in the worst cases, arrest them. This isn't a hypothetical fear. This actually happens.
So without financial privacy, you don't really have the freedom to support causes that challenge the status quo.
You don't. Privacy is the buffer that protects the individual from the power of the state or the corporation.
And that brings us to the fourth and final pillar, which is fungibility. This is a bit of an economic term, but it's absolutely crucial to understanding whether something can even function as money.
It's maybe the most important pillar of all for the long-term health of a currency. Fungibility just means that one unit of a currency is indistinguishable from any other unit.
Okay.
Break that down. A dollar bill is a dollar bill. If I have a crisp new $20 bill and you have a crumpled old one that was, used in a drug deal last week, they're both worth exactly $20 at the grocery store.
Right. The cashier doesn't run a background check on the bill. They just take it.
Exactly. The history of the bill doesn't matter. But in Bitcoin, because the history is permanently attached to every single coin,
The history starts to matter.
a lot. Bitcoin is actually losing its fungibility. We're seeing what people call a two-tier system emerge. You have clean Bitcoin, which has a known, reputable history. Maybe it was just mine or it came directly from a regulated exchange.
And then you have the other kind.
And then you have dirty Bitcoin or tainted Bitcoin, which maybe 5 transactions ago passed through a wallet associated with a darknet market or a gambling site.
And if you're the unlucky person who ends up holding that tainted coin?
Well, you might try to deposit it at an exchange and they'll freeze your account. A merchant might have software that rejects it. Suddenly, your 1 Bitcoin is worth less than my 1 Bitcoin just because of its history.
It's no longer fungible.
It breaks the fundamental promise of money. It becomes more like a collectible, like a piece of art with a documented provenance. And a currency can't survive that way.
You mentioned taint and exchanges rejecting coins. This brings us perfectly to the other side of this coin, which is the industry that exists specifically to create and track this taint.
The privatized spies.
The blockchain analysis firms.
Yep, companies like Chainalysis, Elliptic, TRM Labs. And we should be clear, these are not small startups running out of a garage. These are multi-billion-dollar unicorns.
And their entire business model is just watching the blockchain.
Their business model is to de-anonymize the blockchain. They build these massive maps of the entire crypto ecosystem, and then they sell access to that data to governments, tax agencies like the IRS, the FBI, and of course the banks and exchanges themselves.
So how do they actually do it? I mean,
Mhm.
if the blockchain is just a bunch of random-looking alphanumeric strings, how do they connect the dots?
They use very sophisticated data science and a set of tricks or heuristics. One of the main techniques they use is called clustering.
Okay, explain clustering.
So when you spend Bitcoin, it's not like handing over a specific bill. It's more like you have a pile of inputs and you spend some and get change back.
Right.
For example, you go to a store and buy 5 items, you pay with a $100 bill, you get $43.50 back in change. Bitcoin transactions work in a similar way. You spend an input and you almost always get some change back to a new address that your wallet controls.
Oh.
Chainalysis writes algorithms that look for these patterns across billions of transactions. They can say with a very high degree of probability, address A, address B, and address C are all part of the same wallet controlled by the same person, because address B was clearly the change from address A's transaction.
So they're not just tracking individual addresses, they're clustering them into a single entity or identity.
Exactly. And they combine that with other clever techniques like something called a dusting attack.
A dusting attack? That sounds like a sci-fi weapon or something.
It's a surveillance tactic. They will send tiny microscopic amounts of crypto, we're talking fractions of a penny, literally dust, to thousands and thousands of different addresses.
Why would they do that?
Because eventually, the owners of those addresses will want to clean up their wallets. They'll sweep up all that dust and combine it with other funds to make a real payment. And in that moment, by combining the dust from different addresses into one transaction, they unwittingly reveal to Chainalysis that they control all of those addresses.
That is incredibly sneaky. It's like putting a tiny little GPS tracker on a car without the owner knowing.
It is exactly that. And once they have this giant map of who controls what, they can start doing paint tracking. So if a big crypto exchange gets hacked or a ransomware payment is made, they flag those specific coins.
They mark them as radioactive, essentially.
That's a great way to put it. And then they just watch that radioactive dye move from wallet to wallet to wallet through the entire ecosystem.
And this is really why that old media narrative, Bitcoin is for criminals, has completely flipped on its head, right?
Oh, 100%. For years, the headlines were all, Bitcoin is for drug dealers on the Silk Road. Now, if you talk to agents in the FBI, the DEA, the IRS, they love Bitcoin. They wish every criminal used Bitcoin.
Because it's a gift for investigators.
It's the perfect evidence trail. The case study that proved this beyond a shadow of a doubt was the Silk Road takedown and the arrest of its founder, Ross Ulbricht.
We've all heard the story, but the technical side of how they caught him is fascinating.
The FBI didn't just stumble upon his server in a lucky break. They traced the money. They meticulously followed every single transaction from the Silk Road marketplace across thousands of wallets and mixers, right back to him.
And the source material had a great quote about this.
It did. One of the lead investigators described it as being like watching a river from space. They could see the entire flow of illicit funds laid out before them on this public map.
And because the ledger is public, they didn't even need a warrant to look at the data. They just needed the computing power.
Precisely. So if you're a modern criminal, Bitcoin is actually the single worst tool you could possibly use. You are creating a permanent, immutable evidence locker against yourself that will exist forever.
Okay, so the transparent backpack is real, and the private spies are watching. Let's pivot to the solution. I mean, how do we fix this? If I want digital cash that actually acts like, cash private, fungible, safe, what are my options?
This is where we enter the world of the privacy coins. And the two big contenders in this space are Monero and Zcash. They take completely different philosophical and mathematical approaches to solving this problem.
Let's start with the one that's often called the gold standard of privacy. Let's talk about Monero.
Monero, or XMR. If Bitcoin is a glass house, Monero is a fortified bunker buried under a mountain. Its core design philosophy is that it is private by default.
And that by default part is the key, isn't it?
It is the most important part. In Monero, you don't have to turn privacy on. In fact, you can't turn it off. Every single transaction is automatically opaque.
How does it do that?
It achieves this using a combination of 3 specific cryptographic technologies that work together to mask the 3 parts of any transaction: who sent it, who received it, and how much was sent.
Okay, let's break those down one by one. First, hiding the sender. This uses something called ring signatures.
Right. So imagine you want to send some money, but you don't want anyone to know that it came from you. In Monero, when you create a transaction, the protocol automatically takes your digital signature and mixes it in with the signatures of, say, 10 other random users who have also made transactions on the blockchain.
So it creates a decoy group.
Exactly. Think of it like a choir singing in a completely dark room. You hear a note being sung, you know for a fact that someone in that choir of 11 people sang the note, but because it's dark and they're all mixed together, you cannot possibly identify which specific mouth the sound came from.
So it gives the sender plausible deniability.
Perfect plausible deniability. To an outside observer like Chainalysis, all 11 of those people look like equally likely candidates for being the true sender.
Okay, so that's the sender hidden. What about hiding the receiver? The source material calls these stealth addresses.
Yeah, this handles the destination. So if I want to send you some Monero, I don't send it to your public wallet address. That would create a link. Instead, the protocol automatically generates a unique one-time use address, a sort of burner address for that specific transaction.
So it's like a P.O. box that self-destructs after it receives one letter.
That's a great analogy. If you look at the Monero blockchain, you just see money going to millions of random jumbled addresses that have never been used before and will never be used again. You can't link them back to a single recipient's real wallet. Only your private key can scan the blockchain and say, that one over there, that one's for me.
Okay, sender hidden, receiver hidden. What about the amount? Ring CT.
Right, ring confidential transactions. This is where the really heavy math comes in. It uses cryptographic proofs to verify that the amount of Monero going into a transaction is exactly equal to the amount coming out. So, no money was counterfeited or created out of thin air, but it completely hides the actual number. An observer sees a transaction happen between one of 11 people and some unknown recipient. They don't know if it was for 5 cents or $50 million.
It's a total blackout. Sender, receiver, amount. All gone.
It's extremely effective. Monero is one of the only cryptocurrencies that the big analysis firms openly admit they have a very, very hard time tracking. The IRS has had multi-million-dollar bounties out for years for anyone who can reliably crack it.
So it works so well. Why isn't everyone using it? Why is Bitcoin still king?
Friction. Privacy has a cost. Because of all this heavy encryption, Monero transactions are much larger in terms of data size. They take up more space on the blockchain. The wallets can be harder to sync and use than a simple Bitcoin wallet, but the biggest hurdle, by far, is regulatory.
The governments hate it.
They despise it. From their perspective, it's a black hole for tax evasion and money laundering. So they put immense pressure on the exchanges. They basically say, if you want a license to operate in our country, you cannot list Monero.
So you can't just go and buy it on Coinbase.
Nope. You can't buy it on most of the major mainstream platforms. It's been delisted and pushed into the shadows, which makes it harder for regular people to access.
Okay, so that's the private by default approach. Then we have the other big one, Zcash.
Zcash, or ZEC. This one is often described as the scientific marvel. It uses a truly groundbreaking form of cryptography called zero-knowledge proofs, and specifically a type called zk-SNARKs.
zk-SNARKs. It sounds like a sound effect from a comic book.
It does, but the math behind it is, it's Nobel Prize level stuff. A zero-knowledge proof allows me to prove to you that I know a secret without actually telling you what the secret is.
Okay, you're going to have to give me the analogy for that one. That's a hard concept to wrap your head around.
The classic one is called the magic cave. So imagine a cave that's shaped like a circle with one entrance at the front and a magic door in the back that blocks the path. And that door only opens if you whisper a secret password.
Okay, got it. Circular cave, magic door.
I want to prove to you that I know the password, but I don't want to tell it to you. So you stand outside the cave entrance. I walk into the cave. I go down one of the paths. I get to the magic door. I whisper the password. The door opens. I pass through, and I come out the other path.
So from the outside, I just see you go in one side of the entrance and come out the other.
Exactly. You now have mathematical proof that I must know the password because it's the only way I could have gotten to the other side. But you never heard me say it. You never saw it.
And how does that apply to a crypto transaction?
It means I can prove to the network I have the authority to spend this money and I'm not creating it out of thin air without revealing any of the underlying information, who I am, who I'm sending it to, or how much it is. It's mathematically cleaner than Monero's mixing approach because it doesn't just hide the needle in a haystack, it makes the needle completely invisible.
So technologically, it sounds superior. But Zcash has a famous fatal flaw, doesn't it? The source material calls it the Betamax problem.
It does, and it's a cultural flaw, not a technical one. The creators of Zcash made a crucial decision. They made privacy optional.
Optional.
Yeah. In Zcash, you have two types of addresses. You have transparent addresses, or T addresses, which work exactly like Bitcoin, fully public. And you have shielded addresses, or Z addresses, which use the zk-SNARKs to be fully private.
And you let people choose. And human nature takes over.
Laziness always wins. Shielded transactions are computationally heavy. They take longer to generate, especially on a mobile phone. And for years, most wallets just didn't support them by default. So what happened?
Nobody used them.
The statistics show that something like 95% of all Zcash transactions are just transparent public transactions. Only a tiny fraction are shielded.
And if you're one of the only 5% of people using the privacy feature,
You stand out like a sore thumb. You are waving a giant red flag that says, "Hey everyone, look at me. I have something to hide." The strength of a privacy system relies on the size of the crowd. You need everyone in the herd wearing a mask for the mask to be effective.
if you're the only one at the party wearing a mask, you instantly become the most suspicious person in the room.
That's it exactly. Monero forces everyone to wear the mask whether they want to or not. Zcash leaves the masks in a box by the door, and most people just walk right past it.
So Zcash has, arguably, better technology in a lab, but Monero has better psychology and game theory out in the real world.
Precisely. It won the culture war, even if its tech is a bit messier.
Okay, now, there's a third category of tools here. What if I like Bitcoin? Or I'm heavily invested in Ethereum. I don't want to have to sell everything and switch to Monero. Is there a way for me to, clean my existing transparent coins?
This is the world of mixers, or tumblers. For Bitcoin, the most common approach is a protocol called CoinJoin.
Which sounds like safety in numbers again.
It is. It's a protocol that's built into certain privacy-focused Bitcoin wallets like Wasabi or Samurai. Imagine you and 99 other people each put $100 bill into a giant hat. You shake the hat vigorously, then everyone reaches in and pulls out a $100 bill. You still have your $100, but is it the exact same bill you put in?
No, there's no way to know.
Yeah.
The history is broken.
The link is severed. That's what CoinJoin does. 100 people all put one BTC into a giant collaborative transaction. The transaction shuffles all the inputs and outputs and spits out one BTC back to each person at a new address. An observer sees 100 BTC go in and 100 BTC come out, but they can't prove which input corresponds to which output.
But when we talk about mixing on Ethereum, the story gets much, much darker. We have to talk about Tornado Cash.
We do. Tornado Cash is arguably the most significant and controversial event in the entire history of crypto privacy.
What was it exactly?
Tornado Cash wasn't a company, it wasn't a person, it was a smart contract, a piece of autonomous code, like a robot, living on the Ethereum blockchain.
And how did this robot work?
It was remarkably elegant. You would deposit, say, 10 ETH into the smart contract pool. When you did that, it would give you a secret cryptographic receipt, like a ticket. You would then wait. A few hours, a few days, a few weeks, the longer the better.
To break the timing correlation.
Exactly. Then, using a different computer, a different IP address, you would present that secret receipt to the contract, and it would allow you to withdraw your 10 ETH to a completely new, fresh address that had no link to your original deposit.
And it was incredibly effective at providing privacy.
Too effective in the eyes of the government. In August of 2022, the U.S. Treasury Department, specifically a branch called OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, dropped the nuclear option. They sanctioned Tornado Cash.
This was it was unprecedented. They didn't sanction a person. They didn't sanction a terrorist organization or a country. They sanctioned a piece of software.
They put the smart contract's address on the sanctions list. They sanctioned the code itself. Their justification was that it was being used heavily by the Lazarus Group, which is a state-sponsored hacking group from North Korea, to launder hundreds of millions of dollars in stolen crypto funds.
And to be fair, that was true.
It was, that's a fact. But it was also being used by thousands of regular law-abiding people for legitimate privacy reasons, to hide their salary from their employer, to donate to political causes anonymously, to protect themselves.
So what was the fallout from the sanctions?
It was catastrophic for privacy on Ethereum. The website was seized. One of the open source developers who contributed to the code was arrested in the Netherlands and held without charge. But here's the crazy part. You can't kill a smart contract. The code is immutable. It's still on the Ethereum blockchain today. It's still running.
Okay.
But if you, as a U.S. person, interact with it, if you send money to that address, you are technically violating U.S. sanctions. You are committing a felony.
And all the exchanges, all the on-ramps and off-ramps, they reacted instantly.
Instantly. If you try to move funds that have ever touched the Tornado Cash contract to a place like Coinbase, your account will be blocked and you'll be reported to the authorities. It created this radioactive taint. It showed that even if the code itself is unstoppable, the regulators can choke off all the entry and exit points to the regulated financial world.
The privacy advocates' argument was that this is like banning envelopes because criminals use them to send secret letters.
Exactly. But that argument didn't win the day.
This brings us to the really practical how-to part of this deep dive. Because using Tornado Cash now is extremely risky. Using Monero can be hard to acquire. So for the normie, for the listener who just wants to be a bit safer without ending up on an FBI watch list, what is the basic operational security or OPSEC playbook?
Right, you don't need to be a full-blown spy, but you need to have good digital hygiene. It's like dental hygiene. It's a bit boring, it's a daily practice, but it's necessary if you don't want to lose all your teeth.
Okay, let's run through the rules. Rule number 1, don't reuse addresses.
This is the lowest hanging fruit. It's so easy. If you use the same single Bitcoin address for your salary, for buying coffee, and for your long-term savings, you are building a massive, detailed dossier on yourself for the whole world to see.
But modern wallets make this easy to avoid, right?
They do. Most wallets today are HD wallets. That stands for hierarchical deterministic. They can generate a virtually infinite number of new addresses from your one master seed phrase. Every single time you click receive, you should generate a brand new address. Never use one twice.
Okay, easy enough. Rule number 2, don't link your identity.
We've touched on this. Do not put your main savings address in your Twitter bio. If you're an artist selling NFTs, great. Use a dedicated wallet for that public persona. But keep your vault wallet, your actual savings, completely separate.
And never send money directly between them.
Never. That creates an on-chain link that can never be erased. You've just told the world that your public persona and your private vault are owned by the same person.
Got it. Rule number 3, watch the network layer.
Right.
Hide your IP.
This is a technical one people forget. When you broadcast a transaction from your wallet, you're sending data to a node on the network. That node can see your IP address.
And your IP address is a digital fingerprint of your physical location.
Right. So you could have perfect on-chain privacy, but if your IP address points to 123 Main Street, it doesn't matter. You've de-anonymized yourself at the network level.
So the solution is?
Use a VPN, always. Encrypt and mask your traffic. If you're really, really serious about this, use Tor. But a good paid VPN is the absolute minimum standard.
Okay. Rule number 4, the on-ramp matters. How you buy the crypto in the first place.
This is probably the hardest one for most people, the Coinbase problem. The moment you upload your passport and your driver's license, your privacy for any coins bought there is essentially gone from the start. If you truly want to acquire crypto without a link to your name, you have to avoid KYC.
How is that even possible these days?
It's difficult, but not impossible. You can use peer-to-peer markets like Bisq or Hodl. These are decentralized exchanges that are more like a Craigslist for Bitcoin. They just connect individual buyers and sellers directly.
Or the old school way.
Or literally meeting someone in person and paying with physical cash. It sounds sketchy, I know, like something out of a spy movie, but it's the only way to get a completely clean break from the legacy financial system.
And finally, rule number 5, be aware of metadata.
Data about data. This is what trips up even the smart people. Let's say you use a mixer. If you withdraw exactly 1.5342 Bitcoin from a KYC exchange, and then 1 hour later, 1.5342 Bitcoin shows up in a newly mixed private wallet.
The timing and the amount are a dead giveaway. The analysis firms can just say, well, 1.5342 went missing here and 1.5342 appeared there. It's probably the same person.
Right. Their algorithms are designed to spot these correlations. So you have to be smart. Use non-round numbers. Split up your amounts. Delay your transactions by random intervals. Don't operate on a predictable schedule. You have to add noise and randomness to your behavior.
It all sounds exhausting.
It is, and that's why ultimately privacy is losing. Convenience always wins. Most people will choose the transparent backpack because it's lighter and easier to carry.
And this brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of our discussion, the ethics of it all. Because we're painting a picture of this ongoing war between total surveillance and total opacity.
It's the eternal tension in a free society, security versus liberty.
So let's try to steelman the law enforcement argument. Because they're not the villains in their own story. They're genuinely trying to keep people safe.
No, they're not villains. Their argument, and it's a powerful one, is this. We have a legal and moral mandate to stop terrorism, to stop human trafficking, to stop child exploitation, to stop drug cartels. These are bad people doing undeniably evil things.
And to catch them, you have to follow the money.
You have to. As physical cash disappears from society and we move to a fully digital world, if that digital world is 100% private and encrypted, you are effectively blinding the police. You're giving criminals a safe haven that law enforcement can never penetrate.
So they view things like Monero and Tornado Cash as basically money laundering as a service.
And they are not wrong that criminals use these tools. The North Korean hackers did steal hundreds of millions of dollars to fund a nuclear weapons program, and they did use Tornado Cash to try and hide it. That is a documented fact.
Okay, but then you have the privacy advocate argument.
Which is just as powerful. Their argument is that financial surveillance is the ultimate tool of social control. The old KGB saying was, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." If you give the state the power to see every financial transaction, history tells us they will eventually abuse that power to crush dissent and control the population.
And this brings us back to what the source material called the refugee paradox.
This is the absolute clincher for me. The very same tool, let's say it's Monero or Tornado Cash, that allows a drug lord to launder his profits, is the exact same tool that allows a political dissident to escape an authoritarian regime. It's the same tool that lets a refugee fleeing a war zone carry their life savings across a border without having it seized by corrupt guards.
Or a woman living under a repressive regime who wants to earn and save money without her male relatives knowing about it.
Exactly. It's a dual-use technology. We don't ban cars because bank robbers use them as getaway vehicles. We don't ban encryption because criminals use it to communicate. We accept a certain level of risk in society in order to preserve our basic freedoms.
The current legal system tries to find a balance. In the physical world, it's called a warrant. You have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your home, but a judge can issue a warrant to override it based on probable cause.
But that model breaks down here. You can't serve a warrant to a decentralized blockchain. You can't subpoena a mathematical protocol. The technology has outpaced the law's ability to regulate it with nuance. We're being pushed toward a binary choice, either total surveillance or something close to total privacy.
There's very little middle ground. Some people talk about building backdoors for law enforcement.
But any cryptographer will tell you a backdoor for the good guys is just a backdoor for the bad guys to find and exploit. There's no such thing as a secure backdoor.
And right now, it feels like surveillance is winning.
It is, by a landslide. The vast majority of all crypto activity in the world is fully transparent and flows through KYC'd exchanges. True privacy is becoming a niche, almost underground activity.
Well, that is a sobering place to land.
Right.
We've gone from transparent backpacks to radioactive code and the future of freedom.
It's a lot to process.
It is. Let's try and summarize the key takeaways for the listener before we wrap this up.
Okay. Point 1. Bitcoin is a public ledger. It is not private. Please stop treating it like it is.
Point 2.
The surveillance industry is real. They are incredibly sophisticated, and they are watching.
Point 3.
If you need real, robust privacy, you need to use specific tools like Monero, but you have to understand that they come with high friction and very real regulatory risk.
And the last one?
OPSEC is mandatory. Your behavior and your habits are just as important as the technology you use.
And finally, as always, the homework assignment. We like to leave you with something practical to do.
This one is simple and it's incredibly eye-opening. I want you to go to a block explorer, a website like blockchain.com for Bitcoin, or etherscan.io for Ethereum, and I want you to paste in your own public wallet address.
The one you actually use, not a fresh one.
Yes, and just look at it. Stare at your own financial history. Trace your coins back. See if you can spot the transaction from the exchange where you bought them. See if you can find that dinner you paid for last year.
And then, the important part. Imagine you are not you. Imagine you're a private investigator hired by your ex-spouse in a messy divorce. Or a business competitor. Or a government tax auditor. Look at that data through their eyes.
It will fundamentally change the way you think before you click send ever again.
It absolutely will. Privacy is not about having something to hide. It's about having a self to protect. It's a prerequisite for freedom. And speaking of freedom and identity, next time we're going to pivot to a related topic. We're going to talk about decentralized identity and the future of Web3 social.
How do you prove you are you in a digital world without relying on a government ID or a big tech company? Can we actually build a version of Twitter that can't be censored? We'll get into things like ENS, soulbound tokens, and the Lens protocol.
I can't wait for that one. But for now, zip up your backpacks, folks. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Stay safe out there.